And we've spoken to you in the past, haven't we, John, about a couple of books which you've written previously, but your new book, which is recently out, Assassinated, History of Assassination from Ancient Egypt to the Present Day, actually involves stories in Cambridge and St Neots, doesn't it?
That's true, it does.
So what's this book all about?
Okay, well, it's a history of assassination, as you said, right back from ancient Egypt. So what I tried to do is I tried to identify the first assassination I could find. And the first one I found, now I know your listeners are very well informed, and some may have found an earlier one, but the earliest one I could find was of an Egyptian pharaoh who was murdered by his bodyguard about 4,300 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But Cambridge and Cambridgeshire, as you said, have been caught up in assassinations rather more recently. So one of the stories I looked at involved Cambridge University's first professor of history, who was a victim of assassination.
Really?
Yeah, so he was a Dutchman called Isaac Dorislaus, who was headhunted as the first professor of history and recruited in the 1630s. And that was a time when tensions were beginning to rise between King Charles I and Parliament, the tensions that would result in the English Civil War. And Isaac Dorislaus was supposed to be lecturing on Roman history, but he spent quite a bit of time talking about what you did if you had a tyrannical ruler and what your rights were to remove a ruler who was behaving badly. And Charles I, perhaps not surprisingly, took against this and got the university authorities to suppress Dorislaus and stopped him lecturing. So Dorislaus did a variety of things, but basically he spent most of his time working as a lawyer.
Yes.
And then when the Civil War came up, Dorislaus was a Calvinist, so he was on the parliamentary side, on the side of the radical Protestants. And he became, as a qualified lawyer, he was recruited to be one of the counsel for the prosecution when Charles I was put on trial for his life in January 1649. And Charles, of course, was convicted, sent to the scaffold.
Yes.
And there was even a rumour, though I think probably untrue, that Dorislaus was one of the executioners. But certainly he was involved in the execution of the king by virtue of being one of the counsel for the prosecution.
Yes.
And he was about to retire as a librarian, going to work as a librarian, wanting probably a quieter life. But Oliver Cromwell, who regarded him highly, sent him off to do one last job, which was to try to negotiate an alliance between England and the Dutch Republic. And he had to go off to the Hague. And the unfortunate thing about that was that the Hague was crawling with royalist exiles, including King Charles I's son, Charles II. So when they heard that one of the king's, what they called the regicides, the people responsible for killing the king, when they heard that one of them was in town, of course they were pretty cross.
Yes.
And they put together a team of assassins, and they tracked down without very much difficulty where Dorislaus was staying.
Yes.
Dorislaus was advised to tighten up his security, but seems to have been pretty relaxed and blasé about it all. And so the royalists were able to burst into the inn where he was staying on the 2nd of May, and a couple of serving staff tried to kind of block their way, but these were armed men running around with swords and pistols, and so they had no difficulty in getting into Dorislaus's room. And Dorislaus himself, apparently, having decided there was no means of escape, sat stoically in his chair and just allowed them to kill him.
Wow. That's amazing. That sounds like a movie.
Well, I'm open to offers. Who would you have playing Dorislaus?
Oh, I don't know. Someone, I don't know. Chris Hemsworth, maybe. One of the superheroes. someone ridiculously good-looking and muscular, I think, probably. Now, tell me, John, how did you find out all of this? Is this fairly well documented, or have you had to do a great deal of research?
Well, I have read a lot of books, and gone through newspaper articles and so on. But yes, the Dorislaus story, I pieced it together from a number of different sources. I must confess, before I started writing the book, I hadn't heard of him. I didn't know I started writing the book.
Yes. Wow. It's absolutely fantastic. So that's the Cambridge connection. What have we got in St Neots?
Right, well, in St Neots you have a really celebrated assassin, actually. You have the only person who has ever successfully assassinated a British Prime Minister. Now, the Prime Minister was a man called Spencer Perceval, who's not particularly well known, is he? But Spencer Perceval came to be Prime Minister at a time of great national crisis. So he became Prime Minister in 1809 when the Napoleonic War was raging. Napoleon's armies were running riot in Europe. Napoleon had a blockade against Britain, which was pretty successful, and British business was having real trouble. A lot of people were losing their jobs or being put on short-time working. And as in the midst of all this mayhem, Spencer Perceval became Prime Minister. About the same time as he was becoming Prime Minister, a St Neots man called John Bellingham was being released from prison in Russia. Now Bellingham had an interesting life. He was the son of a land surveyor and miniature painter, and his father died when he was only 9. Then he was apprenticed to a London jeweller, but that didn't really work out. And when he was 17, Bellingham ran away to sea, survived being shipwrecked, and managed to set himself up as a commercial agent. He went to Russia, but he got arrested in Russia in 1804, possibly unjustly, for debt, and spent 5 years in prison in Russia, constantly petitioning the British ambassador to help him, but the British ambassador didn't do anything. And so by the time he was released in 1809, Bellingham was fairly bitter, and he came to England to try to get redress. He blamed the Russian ambassador particularly, but he also blamed the Prime Minister because he tried to petition Spencer Perceval as well, and Perceval wouldn't put his plea in front of Parliament. So in May 1812, Bellingham decided to take matters into his own hands, and he started practicing with a pistol. He went to a tailor and got a concealed pocket made in one of his coats, and he went down to the House of Commons to try to confront the ambassador to Russia, who also happened to be an MP. Now, the ambassador didn't show up, but Perceval did, and when Bellingham saw him, he produced the pistol and shot him through the heart, at close range, killing him dead.
Wow.
He made no attempt to escape and just handed himself over. Now, as we said, this was quite a febrile time. You know, there was short-time working going on. Luddites were smashing machinery in the East Midlands, and at one point, a crowd gathered around the coach that was carrying Bellingham to prison to try and free him. And there were mobs in some places celebrating Spencer Perceval's death. Poems appeared celebrating Bellingham, comparing him to the assassins who killed the tyrant Julius Caesar, and so on. And some people actually thought this might kick off an English revolution.
Yes.
And Bellingham put some of these things to the court when he was charged and put on trial. Claiming that he'd stood up for all Englishmen and that the Prime Minister was putting himself above the law and so on. But it was all to no avail, and the jury took only 10 minutes to convict him, and he was hanged just 1 week after the killing.
Wow. Just 1 week?
Just 1 week, yeah. The wheels of justice turned pretty quick in those days, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. That's fascinating. I can't believe that all of this history happened on our doorstep, John, in little Cambridgeshire. It's amazing.
Well, as I say, you have a unique figure in John Bellingham, the only man to have successfully assassinated a British Prime Minister. As you know, the others tried. There was the famous bombing against Margaret Thatcher at the Grand Hotel in Brighton. There was the mortar attack on John Major in Downing Street.
Yes.
But yes, you have this little bit of history in St Neots.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Look, John, I wish we had more time, but that's all we've got time for. If people want to find out more about your book, Assassin's Deed, and some of this amazing history, where can they head?
Well, it's available on well-known online sites, but also hopefully in your bookshops if any are open, and from the publisher Reaction Books.
Fantastic. John, it's been absolutely fascinating. Let's keep in touch and you can tell me more stories of years gone by. How does that sound?
That sounds great, Andy. Enjoy talking to you.
Super stuff. Cheers, John. All the best. Happy New Year.
And you. Bye.
Bye-bye. That is John Withington there, an author, and his new book, Assassin's Deeds. Sounds like a real page-turner, doesn't it? That's top quality, that is.
How many times must we